Hello guys. Byju's meteoric rise and sudden fall has baffled everybody in the society. Not only students and parents, but also edtech ecosystem, the VC ecosystem, and industry as a whole. All of us are baffled because of his meteoric rise during the corona pandemic and his sudden fall in the last 6-8 months. Now, to understand this, I was going through multiple interviews of Byju Ravindran as well as multiple videos that are available in the market. But most of them have basically covered what numbers were there, how loss Byju's did in last year, who are the VCs, how many acquisitions have made, what is his team structure, etc. But unfortunately, as a consultant, as a career consultant, I tend to look at it from different angle because I can very clearly see Byju as an educator, Byju as a teacher is getting defeated by Byju the businessman. I'll explain what I'm trying to say basically. Now, especially I can comment on this because as a career failure, so to say, I have failed in 4 startups: packaging, resort, hospitality, manufacturing, and publishing. So I tend to know more about failures than the successes. And I'm at the right place to comment on this because I'm also running a startup in edtech, that is career driving school. So all these aspects are playing together. So basically, if you look at Byju's rise, Byju started, he is basically an engineer and he's very good at teaching mathematics. This is what we understand, and it is established. So while in Bangalore on a yearly annual leave, he taught some mathematics for his friends and family. I think 30-35 students friends attended his first class in Bangalore, and the 6th class was attending 1,200 students. So from first class to the 6th class, I'm not sure how much time, it must be 1 month or 2 months, but from 30 to 1,200, this is a huge number of students that can get attracted to a teacher. A teacher has to be phenomenal. A teacher has to be very, very impressive. Then only this kind of things can happen. And Byju must be a very good teacher as an individual. So after this, we have seen that he has reached a stage wherein he had to actually rent stadiums to address or to teach mathematics to 25,000 students at the same time. And this was 2007, 8, 9, 10. And he was doing fantastically well. He was traveling 9 cities in a week to cover his students face to face. It is all one-on-one interactions. And then 2015 Byju's app came, and then Byju hired a lot of people, a lot of teachers, so to say. And he taught his methodology of teaching to the teachers, and then the teachers started imparting education and training to the students that were subscribed to the app. I think so. And then as you know, the growth was linear till 2019-20. Corona pandemic is where because of the lockdown, people basically jumped onto screen time, and then that is how Byju's growth was exponential in the corona pandemic period. So let us understand what made him rise and fall so quickly. So as we have seen, the teaching methods is one of the most important things. Byju as an individual, he is an excellent teacher. It is exactly why all the students were thronging to him or got attracted to him and got subscribed to his teaching methods. I'm not saying I have subscribed to his teaching method, but as the platform came in between, Byju basically moved from Byju the educator to Byju the businessman, wherein he hired a lot of teachers, and the teachers were imparting on behalf of Byju. So teachers were interacting with students day to day in daily lives, and not Byju. Byju was just a face. Byju was just a logo, or Byju was just a man behind the complete Byju app. So this is how the distance between the students. So basically, if I adore Sachin Tendulkar as a batsman, I tend to. He's obviously a very fantastic batsman, and he's my superstar. But if at all Sachin Tendulkar plans to open a cricket academy, I would love Sachin to teach me or my children or my neighbors directly, one-on-one, face-to-face. Now, Sachin Tendulkar as an individual also has limitations. He also has 24 hours per day, out of which he has to prioritize other things, and then only he can come to cricket academy, and teach me and my children, for example. Now, if my approach to Sachin Tendulkar's cricket academy is, I'm joining the academy because Sachin is teaching me. Now, over a period of time, let us say 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the line, Sachin Tendulkar hires 500 trainees, 500 coaches who are trained by Sachin Tendulkar, and these coaches are actually indirectly training me. Now, Sachin Tendulkar can be seen in the distance. I can only see him on the billboards and the posters. But I know that I am actually getting trained in Sachin Tendulkar's cricket academy. But the coach or a teacher is a trainer or a coach who is trained by Tendulkar. So there is a gap. I joined because of Sachin Tendulkar, because was going to teach me, and then suddenly some other coach has come in between. I'm not saying the other coach is good or bad, but my objective, my interest was in getting my learning from the man himself. So this is the biggest distance I think that was created when Byju's app was launched. So Byju the educator, Byju the teacher started getting overtaken by Byju the entrepreneur, Byju the businessman. This is the first point that I could think of. The second is, as Byju always says, ambition, skill, and capital are the essential things to build any business. So ambition was there, skill was there, capital unfortunately was there. I'm saying unfortunately because we'll come to the point where capital has played a major role in downfall of Byju's. So usually lack of capital is the problem. In Byju's case, as you said, when in 2015 Byju's app was launched, they were till 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, they were growing at a very linear stage. For example, Mr. Pai from Manipal, or Mohandas Pai for that matter, he invested in Byju's 50 crores only because they could see that Byju is a passionate teacher, and the students are liking how he teaches mathematics and other subjects. So Byju's limitation is his own time. He cannot spare more than 24 hours per day to teach people face to face. That is how he got. Obviously, there is a logic in business expansion also, but the distance created between the students and Byju himself, the man, started creating the problems, and then the businessman took over. Basically, expansion became more important than keeping in touch with the people. And then ambition was there, skill was there, capital also was there. And then basically Byju, as we know, he's a fantastic teacher. I understand he teaches mathematics and physics very well. But when he started Byju app, it was for nursery till 12th, or even for competitive exams. Now Byju as an individual cannot teach all the subjects. He cannot be master of all the subjects. His teaching methodology can be interesting, but that does not mean he can teach history also equally well like mathematics, or he can teach social science equally well like mathematics. So this gap started widening between the students, their expectations, and Byju's teachers, not Byju. And then unfortunately till 2019-20, people were earning a lot of money from Byju. People were investing a lot of money in Byju's, and parents and students also were comparatively very happy from the performance of Byju's and the quality enhancement in the students' learning and teaching. So this is during the Corona pandemic, basically because of the next point. My point is, as we know, Byju's biggest growth came in Corona pandemic. So people say that Corona pandemic actually helped Byju grow. In my opinion, Corona pandemic actually hit Byju. Byju was growing linear at this stage, and suddenly there was a spurt. There was a geometric growth in the organization, because of which there were so many problems. The cracks got exposed, the people got exposed, the resources got exposed, the operations, the procedures got exposed, and Byju's as a business got exposed. And that is why they are actually falling down. I'll explain this. Till 2021, they were growing linearly, and then because of Corona, because of lockdowns, because of increased screen time, their business boomed. So the exponential growth in the subscriptions of Byju app happened in the Corona pandemic. And by looking at this 200, 250, 300% growth, even more investors got into investing money into Byju's, and Byju got a huge amount of money in his kitty, and he was not clear what to do with the money. Basically, he may be, but it was not shared with all of us. I think he's one of the biggest, while watching his interviews, one of the biggest thing that struck my mind is, he said, people like me or people like us basically tend to raise money when they need it in the business. Byju said, we raise money when we don't need it. Basically, Byju says they raise money when they don't need it. That means they are not sure about where the money can be utilized, if at all it comes. And at that point in time, they raise money from market. This is a counter-effective argument. Basically, he said during the Corona pandemic, when the subscriptions were surging, he got a huge amount of investment. For example, based on some numbers in the industry, if $6.6 billion were invested in edtech during the Corona pandemic, approximately 3 to 3.3 billion, that means 50% almost, came to Byju's. That is a huge amount of investment in edtech. That is how he became unicorn and decacorn, etc. His valuation of the organization was 22 billion towards the fag end of 2022. So that story itself is very scary. If an organization is growing at a linear stage and suddenly there is a spurt, and then you grow at a geometric progression, my next point is people get exposed. For example, glass. Everybody. For example, I was telling Byju also has a glass ceiling. He cannot grow himself beyond a certain point in time in specific field of expertise. As a teacher, he can be fantastic. That does not mean he can be very good with money. That does not mean he can be very good with acquisition mergers. That does not mean he can be very good with taxation. That does not mean he can be very good with FEMA and legal implications. So all these aspects are playing together. As we are aware, they were not having CFO. Even CFO was not there during the Corona pandemic, and VP Finance was taking care of their finances. That itself says that the focus was on the business generation, but the sanitization of the business or hygiene of the business was not maintained. That is how they came in unnecessary focus of ED and then taxation department, and then they were not submitting their returns in time. 18-20 months they took for filing their documentation, and Deloitte, their auditing firm, they left them in the lurch, etc. All these things. So when the organization grows geometrically, if there is no process, if there are no right people to take care of all the responsibilities, and then if there is no system in place, obviously organizations tend to falter and organizations tend to fall apart because you have money, and then your Corona subscriptions are touching the roof, hitting through the roof, and then you are buying from the money available, you are buying your targets, for example, White Junior or Great Learning or any other Alpha, for example, for that matter. So I understand Byju bought 10 to 11 organizations which were in the edtech industry that were complementing its product fitment in the market, as they call it. So this easy availability of money actually worked against Byju, if you ask me. Corona pandemic worked against Byju. Easy availability of money worked against Byju because he was not sure what to do. And then the next immediate thing is to either increase the sales resources to 10,000 people, or to buy new companies so that we can grow organically as well as inorganically. So this, first of all, because of a pandemic, the growth is not real. Growth is hypothetical, or growth actually in money is really real, but the reason behind the growth is not because of the performance or the sales activities, but because of the situation around lockdowns. And that was considered to be a that was considered to be a backline benchmark based on which all these people who are investing money, all these people who are getting good incentives were benchmarking their growth or targets based on this 2022 performance, which is high in situation. It is not practical at all. So this easy availability money made him buy certain people, certain organizations which were not necessary. Then these acquisitions were too much and too soon. For example, buying Whitehead Junior, Alpha, etc. And it is what we call spreading too thin and too wide. Basically, I know that if at all, for example, I know that edtech industry is 10 billion in India, and I as an individual can cover only 50 million. I'm talking about 10 billion industry, and I can cover only 50 million. That is the clarity that I have, because I know my resources, I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, I know my money, and I know my people who will support me, and I know how much time I can spend per day in doing this. So all this, if the market is 10 billion, that does not necessarily mean I need to be ambitious and skillful and moneyed enough to claim all the 10 billion market. That is not possible. So it is spreading too thin and too wide, and then the obvious possibilities of breaking. That is exactly what happened to Byju's. The next point is stakeholders. As we grow, when Byju's was growing linearly, he had his founders with them. A lot of people were working for 10-15 years now with Byju's, and they were content. The growth was linear, the targets were linear, the performance was linear, the pressure was linear. Suddenly, when a lot of money came into picture, a lot of money was invested in Byju's, a lot of stakeholders also got added. For example, there are always predators and sharks in the industry. I'm not only talking about investors, but also other types. So when these predators and sharks in the money business, when they see that certain organization in certain sector is growing, obviously they will latch onto bandwagon and they will try to earn as much money as possible. They may not be aligned with your vision, mission, and your objective and your ambition. Their only objective is to put in 100 rupees and get 200 back in as little time as possible. So these stakeholders, when they got added onto your pressure building mechanism, as I understand, there are 70 stakeholders or investors that have invested in Byju's as we speak. So these stakeholders got added. At the same time, the founder, for example, Byju always says that there are 9 people with him who were with him when he started. Now, unfortunately, this is a good point and this is a bad point too. Good point in the sense that they still believe in you, they are still working hard for you, and they are content and they're happy. The bad point is each out of the nine, not everybody will be of equal caliber. For example, if Byju is doing 500 CR in a year in 2015, and if they are doing now for 5,000 CR, the requirement of the organization is very different from people, from accounts, from logistics, from sales, from marketing, and from back office, from the studio. Everybody doing 500 crores in a year and doing 5,000 crores in a year are absolutely different things. So that means my point is, if 8 people are with you when you are doing 10 CR, then they were with you when you are doing 500 CR, and then these same people are managing 5,000 CR, it is absolutely not necessary that all of these 9 people will be able to sustain the pressure that comes with it. Or it is absolutely not necessary that all these 9 people will be capable enough to manage all this stress and skill requirements and expertise that is required to manage 5,000 crores. Just because they are there with you, that does not make them eligible to manage such a humongous amount of business. In that case, what you can do is, you don't want to lose them, perfect, no problems. You can always give them role, they are best at doing it, and then you can, whatever additional responsibility that comes, you need to find right people from the market who can do it. For example, VP Finance taking care of your audits and as working as a CFO is a strict no-no, and I'm sure Byju will agree with me on this now. So it is difficult to manage expectations once, for example, 70 investors are sitting on your head to make sure that, for example, let us say you are doing 500 CR before Corona. Suddenly you are doing 2,000 CR in Corona pandemic, and now based on that 2,000 CR benchmark, these new investors are expecting you to do 4,000 crore into 2023, which is not possible at all. It is organically not possible. We cannot scale at this level only by adding 5,000, 10,000 salespeople. That is not the way market works. Otherwise, you can always hire 50,000 people and you can be a 20,000 crore company overnight. That is not how things work. So this is difficult to manage expectations of the employees because of the pressure. It is difficult to manage expectations of the market. It is difficult to manage expectations of the students. It is difficult to manage expectations of the parent. It is difficult to manage expectations of the stakeholders, that is investors, and it is extremely difficult to manage expectations of the legal and compliance issues, taxation issues, and even more important, it is even more difficult is to manage your own expectations from yourself unless you know where the ceiling is. Now, this was an important point, because as stakeholders increase, obviously pressure building mechanisms increase, and that is exactly why we see that their workplace, the sales function of the Byju's team was absolutely toxic. The TLs were shouting and cursing their juniors to do their daily targets, etc., etc. They were not paid incentives when they're due, etc., etc. Their vendors were not paid. Even Akash was not paid. Even the term B loan is not paid. So even ED is saying that you need to pay us 9,000 rupees because of 9,000 crore rupees because of the FEMA regulations. All these things are happening because of stakeholders increase, which were not necessary. The crux of the matter is, first of all, you are an educator, you got into business, which is fine, but you must know your limitations, and you must also hire right people to do the right job. A VP Finance cannot be a CFO at any given point in time, however exceptional he or she can be. So these pointers are very important. Then the next point is, while growing startups, we have seen that equity-based progress is always better, because then the person or the entity who is investing money in you is partner in your organization. So there are pros and cons to both, but the partner always tends to rely you more compared to the investor who has nothing to do with you except the money that he gets in return. So this equity based would have worked for you better, but easy money, as you say, we raise money when we don't need it itself is a very big problem. Actually, this mentality itself is very counterproductive or counter-effective. So this, instead of equity based, instead of taking dates or loans from the market and then trying to build your business and while assuming that whatever you will touch in the industry will turn to gold, and then you can always take term loan B from US and $1 billion, and you can return it in 6 years, provided whatever you are planning to do from business perspective works fantastically well. So this is not how the industries work. That is at least what we are seeing now. So there's always equity-based growth wherein people are partnering in business, and then there is debt-based growth wherein you are getting money from the market and you have to return it irrespective of whether your business is working or not. And that is exactly where the Byju as an organization is stuck at this point in time. The next point is nail in the coffin, as we say, is while you had a tremendous amount of fresh money with you in the Corona pandemic. All the 70 investors invested a lot of money, and you were on the spree to buy companies for inorganic growth. At the same time, your improved their marketing expenses were touching the roof. By Lionel Messi, for example, BCCI sponsorship, for example, Qatar FIFA World Cup for sponsorship, for example, Shah Rukh Khan is a brand ambassador, for example. So once you have built a brand, where do you stop? For example, if your annual revenue is 2,000 crore, you cannot obviously spend 4,500 crores on marketing expenses. It is extremely difficult to justify logically why we must be doing all this. If at all, if your think tank or the core group is advising you to do all these things, then obviously you will need to change the core think tank, and you need to get new people, new blood in, so that you can survive, sustain, and flourish even now. And after this marketing expenses, obviously the last nail in the coffin, as I said, was screen time. Once the Corona pandemic slightly reduced, or the medical fraternity took care of Corona pandemic, schools started getting reopening, and schools reopened, and students started going back to the schools, and the screen time was reduced. Students started learning from the school, and your Byju app screen time started getting reduced. So it obviously put enormous pressure on any additional growth in the business, because new subscriptions were not coming, and at the same time the existing students were also not utilizing the apps completely. So that also hurts. So this screen fatigue also worked against Byju, because of which subscriptions hit rock bottom, and then the people who already had subscriptions also, they were not renewing, or they were not accessing the application, and that is how all these things started collapsing. So my point here is, while everything was going fine, instead of raising money, Byju's could have gone in a linear scale, irrespective of Corona pandemic's hyper growth. That also could have managed properly. And then there are organizations which have grown in Corona pandemic stupendously, very fantastic growth. At the same time, they have managed their growth even in Corona pandemic. They are still linear. So all these things. So as a failure in 3-4 startups, I can say all these things, because a lot of people, I have seen a lot of videos wherein numbers are discussed. Byju took this much loan, Byju is supposed to pay this much loan, Byju has so many stakeholders, Byju has this salary to be paid, Byju is doing this, Byju is doing that. But the actual problems were not identified in any of the videos. That is why I thought of making this, because these pointers are extremely important. As a startup entrepreneur, as a businessman, these pointers they must be addressed at the right point and right time. Otherwise, we tend to be Byju of the globe. Byju of the Decacon can be, for example, $22 billion valuation in 2020. I think fag end of 2020, $22 billion is 1,80,000 crores valuation. And currently, as we speak, it is 1 billion. That means 8,200 crores. So Byju's has moved from 1,80,000 crores to 8,200 crores in a matter of a year. And this is not at all good. And he's still supposed to pay a lot of investors back, including the loans that he has taken from the market. And the situation seems to be very tense and out of control. So let us hope that Byju takes care of all these aspects, and Byju always says that business can fail, but entrepreneur should not. We also hope that Byju as an entrepreneur should not fail. Business can fail or business can flourish, but we need Byju, people like Byju who can, as an educator, who can bring in new unicorns in the globe, and then the finances can be taken care by some other people. Thank you very much.